Hi, everyone. I am so sorry for the delay,
But at
but
least we
thank you.
finally made it.
We finally made it. The devil wanted to stop our great work, but we told him no way because we had a message to get out. And we are here to talk about how to break free of the trap of everyday living. And so I am your host, founder of Frugal and Phenomenal, FNPhenomenal, Aisha Taylor. And what I do is I help women decide that their self-worth is not dependent on their financial worth. So what I do is I help them to find their purpose and identify the things that bring them true holistic happiness and then help them to clean up their finances because previously they have been using money as a crutch for their self-worth. So I am so excited to have Miss Julian in here
Yay!
today joining me. And just so you guys know, this is my very first Google Hangout.
And mine too, so you're not alone.
Not alone, so you get to meet again everything. But we made it, and that is the really important thing. So, just to give you a little bit of background about Julian, we actually met at Doreen Rainey's Get Radical conference a few weeks ago. And literally, we both had tables, we were both vendors there, and we were both selling an awesome book. She was pre selling. I was selling, but we really just hit it off immediately. I just remember this fabulous and fierce woman just walking up to my table like, "Hi, I have a table too," right? So she was just so open and so friendly. So we just started talking, and I love her book. We're gonna get to this later. It's just so fly, and I like
Thank
fly.
you.
But, and it was kind of cheeky, like my own title. So I just automatically clicked with her. So when I talked to her more after the conference, I really got to know who she was. And when I say that this woman epitomizes bold and fearless,
Thank
I just
you.
cannot wait until you guys get to hear more of her story. So, without further ado, I don't want to steal your thunder because you're so awesome. So, I know you're going to just let everyone know who you are in your own words and the awesome work that you do and how you help women to become bold and fearless.
Amen. Amen. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me, Aisha. I'm
You're
so
welcome.
excited to be on my first Google Hangout. Very first. That's why it took us a while to get it worked out. We've been trying to get this together for a week. Let me just tell you all. That's how committed we are to getting you this information. But I am really excited to be with you all. As Aisha told you all, my name is Julian B. Kiganda, and I'm actually originally from Uganda. I was born in East Africa, came here when I was really young to the United States, so you can probably not hear much of an accent unless I get around my folks. Um, but I've been here a long, long time and have gotten into a little bit of everything. Everything from starting my own design firm, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, to now starting my Bold and Fearless brand and consulting, and also writing and producing or publishing my first book with my younger sister, Christine. And that's going to be coming out May 13th this year, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. And what I do with Bold and Fearless, which I launched in October of 2013, I really help individuals and organizations live out their purpose boldly and fearlessly and really discover what that is. And I really think this is a calling that I've probably had for a while, and I think I've fulfilled it in different ways. But sometimes God has to take you through some things to really understand, what you're supposed to be doing at a particular juncture, at a particular chapter in your life. So I'm at a point in my life where I have gone through some really major transitions, and I'm in a great place. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you all more about that. And I think, Aisha, you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. I didn't want to like have any noise or anything, so I just put myself on mute. I'm
Oh,
here.
okay. wanted to make sure. So yeah, I mean, that's a little bit more about me, and then I think we'll kind of learn some more as we go along.
Yes. So that is such an awesome introduction. So really, like, you're honestly an inspiration to me because you are the type of person who just sees something she wants. And sometimes, people can get a little bit comfortable in
Mm,
their own existence. And
yeah.
I just remember a story that you told me. Actually, I saw it on your blog first. And it said how I decided to get radical. I shut down my own company that had been operating since 2006. And so to me, I'm like, that takes a lot of guts, right? Because you were running a successful company and then you just said, you know what, I'm not having fun with this anymore. So it's time for me to move on to something new. And
Mhm.
so just take us through that process. Like, how did you do that? And how did you decide that you wanted to step out on faith and trust the vision that God gave you to do something different?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we have all night to go through everything, but I'm gonna do my best to sum it up. Well, I think as I talked about in the blog post, it was I think it was something like 3 reasons I'm shutting down my company. I started my company, which I'm actually going to be shutting down in a couple of weeks, called Vibrant Design Group. My degree is actually in graphic design, so that's what I studied. That's what I've pretty much done for the past 15 years. So I started off freelancing in 2000 and then really started growing it into a company because I wanted to take on larger projects. I have this term I use, and it may not be politically correct, but I call it creative schizophrenia because I
I love
just
it. That's hilarious.
I mean, I've always been the type of person that, anything that's creative and allows me to use every gift that I've been given, I get really excited about it. So that ranges everything from, like design to fine art to dance to writing to community organizing, but anywhere where I get to really be creative. And so in 2006, I launched Vibrant Design Group. And the purpose was really to promote positive images of people of color through branding, marketing, and design. And so it was a multicultural design firm. And I can't tell you when I first started the company, I was actually going through. Well, I started the company in November, or rather June, June 2006, which was actually the same month that my divorce was final. I had been married for 5 years before that and had gone through a really rough time and had to really, sometimes they say or things have to fall apart before they can really come together. And I think that's what it was for me. So the vision for Vibrant came during that really difficult time. And I believe it was really what God needed me to do at that point in my life, which is just help elevate, multicultural images. And so for, let's see, 2006, about 8 years, work with everything from major government organizations to Fortune 500 companies to international nonprofits. I mean, you name it. It really it served and it fed my creativity because I got to work on everything: brochures, websites, exhibits, museums, everything. And then in 2010, it's funny because that was actually an amazing year. That was the first year, and I remember I wrote this in my business plan when I first launched in 2006. I had written in my business plan that I wanted to land $1 million plus contract. So in 2010, my company landed $1 million plus contract.
Oh
And
my
it was,
God, that's awesome.
yeah, I mean, it was an incredible experience. Um, and it was a project that we actually ended up using almost more than 200 people to complete it. And when it was over, it was great because I was like, oh my goodness, I feel like I used everything. I mean, it took everything in me to do that project and lead this huge team and implement this project that should have taken a year. It took us 5 months. Um, and so when the project was over, I was like, okay, I'm ready for the next challenge. And it was a high. I think as entrepreneurs, very often we get excited about these challenges. We're like, okay, we're ready for the next thing. And so that was really a high. And after that, I was expecting, all the other projects to be just like that. And instead, what happened is things actually started really slowing down with the company. And actually, at that point, I brought on a business partner, and she was helping to do business development, but things just weren't working. And, it took us a while trying to figure out what is going on. She even said, like, in the first year, maybe 2011, well, maybe this is not what you're supposed to be doing. Maybe this part of your journey is over. And I was just like, no, it can't be. I founded this company. This was my vision. I know that I still have work to do here. But, about 2 years ago, well, maybe about a year and a half ago, it really finally dawned on me. And I came to understand that, God sometimes gives you a vision for a certain point in your life to get you to where he wants you to take it next. And I finally understood that, the vision for Vibrant Design Group was just for that time. And that everything that I had learned, all my experiences, all my mistakes, all of my the people that I met through that particular chapter, I was going to be able to use that and utilize it in this next chapter, which is now my Bold and Fearless chapter. But it took me a really long time to get to that point. Went through some really, I have to say, some dark times, and I think it was a combination of the economy just tanking for a lot of people. A lot of small businesses were having challenges. But I think, quite honestly, some of it was just my stubbornness. And God and I had a couple of conversations. No, we had more than a couple of conversations. But, I finally, once I was able to see clearly, I heard him say to me one day while I was taking a shower, he just said, Julian, just let it go. Just let it go. Just surrender it all. And when I heard that, I just felt like this weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I realized that it was actually okay that because I hadn't given myself permission, he was giving me permission to let this chapter go, to let this company go. I had done everything I was supposed to do in that chapter, and now he wanted me to go on to the next challenge. And so, I think the biggest difference with what I did with my design firm and what I'm doing with Bold and Fearless is that I'm really now, when you work as a design firm and marketing company, you generally work as a consultant one-on-one with large clients or smaller clients, and you do a project at a time. Sometimes I'm retainer, sometimes project-based. And the challenge with that is you don't really have a lot of control over what the client does with that once you've done the project. And so I started finding that I was becoming frustrated because I would see where I could take this particular project, and the client just didn't have the same vision. So it was almost like my growth and my own personal development was being stunted because I couldn't fully realize what the vision I had for them. And I think part of what God was trying to tell me was, well, that's all fine, but it's time for you to now start living out the vision I have for you. You've done everything else you could for clients, and now it's time for you to start living out the vision I had for you. Funny thing is, when I was going through, my divorce and separation in 2005, 2006, God had actually given me the vision for what I'm doing now with Bold and Fearless. I always saw myself, doing more writing. I saw myself writing a book, maybe several books, and I saw myself speaking to women in particular. And I kind of saved that, and put it in the back of my mind, but I never really looked at it again because I knew when the time was right, it would come to pass. And so about a year ago, I started this journey of figuring out what was my next chapter and getting really real with myself about what I enjoyed and what I was really passionate about, and those things that I really was no longer as interested in doing. And so so really my focus now is on, speaking, doing consulting, and doing workshops with larger groups of individuals, and definitely writing. So that part I'm really excited about. And, when I launched my blog in October 2013, I got so much positive feedback. I mean, I've gotten people writing me and texting me, and just, it's been one of those things that helps you realize that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I'm feeling so great about taking that leap. It wasn't easy because it's like, when you start your own company, that's your baby. You're like, I can't just let my baby go. But sometimes you got to let certain things go so that God can bring you the blessings that he wants you to have for that next chapter in your life.
So what were like three key things that you did when you were going through the process? Because it took, so you had to take some steps in order to get that clarity, in order to like really go through and figure out what your purpose was, and go through and figure out what makes you happy, what doesn't, what brings you joy, what no longer brings you joy. So what are some key things that you did in order to help yourself get that clarity?
I would say, I mean, I've always been, I thank my parents for this, but they've given us a gift of faith. I have 6 siblings, 4 sisters and 2 brothers, so come from a huge family. And I'm sure my parents needed those prayers and that faith to just get through with us. But, I thank them for that because they gave us a gift of faith. And so prayer has always been my fallback. That has always been the one thing that I go to. And eventually, it brings me back. It centers me. Now, the thing is, sometimes when you pray, you don't feel like you're hearing God, and I found that he's not always going to come to you in the way that you expect. Sometimes he'll speak through other people. Sometimes he'll speak through situations where you keep seeing the same thing happening over and over again. And until you learn the lesson, you're going to keep getting that same lesson. So prayer was a big one. I've always kept journals, so writing out what I'm going through or my feelings or how I feel, that's always been a big way to just let stuff out. And I've always found once I write stuff out, I may write it out initially and just leave it there to get it out of my system. But then usually when I go back and I reread what I wrote, things start to click. Things start to make sense. I've gone back and read journals I've kept from maybe 10 years ago, and I'll see patterns that that I've continued to what's the word I'm looking for? But I keep making the same mistakes, right? And so it's like when you start seeing that you're making those same mistakes, you're like, okay, well, if this keeps happening, that means there's something that I need to address, and that's why this thing keeps coming up. So prayer, writing is a big one, just journaling, putting stuff down. I think it's also really important, the one thing that really helped me in terms of figuring out what my next steps were was really just writing down this one exercise, if there's one thing that people take from this call, especially as women, because I think as women, we tend to be really hard on ourselves. Mm-hmm. We don't take credit where credit is due. We have a hard time blowing our own horn. We have a hard time saying, looking at our accomplishments and saying, wow, I'm a bad sister, And so one really key thing that I did to figure out what my next chapter was going to look like and what the vision was I bought a journal, and this was specifically just for my, figuring out my next chapter. It wasn't just to write about my feelings, just to really brainstorm. So one thing that I did was I took every single thing I had done, every project I'd worked on, everything I'd accomplished in my professional career, and I wrote it down. And I kept writing, and I kept writing, and I looked at, everything from my community work to my business to performing arts. I'm also a performing artist. I wrote all of that down. And when I wrote it down and I looked at that list, first of all, it became very clear that whatever my next chapter was, it was definitely going to continue to include creativity and communication and culture. And so, my tagline for Bold and Fearless is inspiring change through culture, creativity, and communication. And so all three of those things have always been really important in the work that I do, especially being, of African descent and having grown up in an African household. Culture was just something we were surrounded by. I didn't recognize how much I was being influenced by that until I got older and was, looking at the kind of work I was doing. But I wrote everything down, and when I looked at that list, I was like, wow, I've really done a lot. There's absolutely nothing. It made me realize there was absolutely nothing I couldn't do. And honestly, that was the first time I really sat down and looked at what I had accomplished in my lifetime. And that was probably the one biggest thing that helped me shift my mindset. One, to realizing that I was capable of whatever it was that was next for me, however big or intimidating it seemed, because I'd already done all these other things. And then two was just, just clarity about what I really wanted to do.
You know that I was trying to take notes and capture some of the nuggets that you have because there were quite a few. And when you say give yourself credit, like I think about some of the clients that I work with. Like I'll have a discovery session and people will want to have a 20-minute clarity session with me to discuss their finances. And one of the things that constantly comes up, I don't think that I've had a call where this hasn't come up. The women are like, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. I know I need to fix this. I know I need to fix this. I would love to have this. I would love to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll be listening, and I'm like, you need to take a break and just give yourself credit
Yes.
for the progress that you've already made. Number one, you realize and you understand that what you're doing now is not going to lead you to the life that you want to live.
Yep.
I'm like, that's power and reflection and in clarity right there, because a lot of people, they continue to make the same mistakes.
Yep.
They don't realize that they need to do something different. So congratulate yourself because you know you need to do something different.
Absolutely.
And so I remember I was talking to a client one day, and she was telling me all the things that were wrong with her finances and her financial plans.
Mm-hmm.
Come to find out, she's never had a late payment for a bill.
Wow.
So it's like you're doing something right because you're paying stuff on time. So give yourself credit to that, right?
Yeah.
And so people are like, well, I'm not saving, I'm not investing as much. But you are investing, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it just helps them to have someone say, no, congratulate yourself. I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you.
Yep.
Because it gives them permission
Yep.
to celebrate their own accomplishments, right?
Absolutely.
And we women, oh my God, we are our own worst critic. Like,
We are.
totally fly, but then like, well, this little thing isn't right. And then you beat yourself up because you're not perfect, right? But nobody's perfect. Just yourself. That was it. So I love that. And then the one thing that you mentioned too about journaling, and I'm glad you mentioned it because that's something that I've wanted to get better at. Because I know that I'm a very sporadic journal, or if that's a word. But so sometimes I'll like make notes in my phone about some of the things that I'm feeling, and like I just think about it like we were talking when we were testing out everything for this video.
Yes.
But you know, one of my friends texted me. She said she thinks it's a glitch on the Mac software. So she's had weird.
And I felt that. Remember? Yeah.
Did the same thing. Yeah. So, but one thing that I wish is like when you were saying how God reveals His plans to you during your darkest times. He's preparing you. Like I went through a situation at work where things just weren't going well. I wasn't being treated right, and it was just an environment that you just shouldn't have to work in. And through my misery, through my despair, through dreading getting up every day to go to work, God gave me the vision for what I needed to do to build Frugal and Profitable. And He was preparing me. He was forcing me to become more reliant on Him. I had to get closer to Him to be able to listen to the things that He was telling me.
That's exactly what it is.
Exactly. It's just like, Aisha, you're trying to do too much on your own. You can't do it. And so through that pain, I was able to birth something that is a vessel for good for other people.
Yeah.
And then when I looked back on everything, once I was out of the misery, and I was able to look back, I was so grateful for it. And people ask me, like, do you regret going to that assignment? I'm like, no, I don't regret it because I needed it. That was exactly what I needed to move me from here, to move me through here. And for that, I'm going to be forever grateful for that assignment. And after I got out of it, I'm like, man, I wish I was keeping a journal. Like, I know how awful I felt, but if I had to go back and look at the words that would have come out of
Yes.
that. I just so wish I had that habit of journaling.
Yeah, and you know the thing about it is, I mean, I write when I'm happy, I write when I'm sad, I write when I don't even have anything to write. I mean, I haven't been as good about it lately. I would probably journal almost every day at some points, and other times it's maybe once a month or once. It just depends on what's going on. But I usually try to remember to. In fact, this is a good reminder for me to go journal tonight. Um, but you know, I don't think I would have learned as much as I did and understood as much as I do had I not written all those things down. Because there's so many lessons that came to me, like you said, during the dark times. And writing those down, actually being able to go back and reread them, helped me to go through, you know, difficult times again. So, and what I recognize too is that those are the times when, like you said, God speaks to you the most. So I try to make it a point, especially when I hear him saying something. I mean, I even keep my phone next to my bed. I have if I wake up like in the middle of the night and I have, you know, an idea or I feel like God spoke to me about something, I'll just type into my little notepad on my phone about, you know, any ideas for, you know, a product or something, a blog post or whatever. I'll write those down. But, you know, in the phone, but anything when it comes to like my own personal growth, I probably have, no less than 10 journals that I've used over the year that I've kept, and just go back and look at those, and I look at the growth. And I think what it's also helped me realize is that personal growth is not a destination. It is a journey. It's a journey. You have never arrived. There's always something to learn. And it really is up to you to decide at what pace you're learning, you know, because as they say, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so if you're not ready, you want to just keep getting the same test over and over and over again until, you know, you finally pass it. Then the teacher can come and take you on to the next lesson.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And it's funny, like when you think about parents when they talk to their kids, they're
Oh,
like, how many times you gotta beat your head up against the
yes.
wall?
Oh my gosh. Oh, tell me. I got a 10-year-old. I know. 10-year-old girl. I know. I know.
But no, that's awesome. So so one question that I have is many women watching, they know what they need to do to bring about
Mhm.
positive change. A lot
Mhm.
of times we know, but it's a
Mhm.
difference between doing
Yep.
what we know, making the shift between actually practicing what we know. Like a lot of women, they know that they need to develop a spending plan and to save money and if they
Mhm.
and invest and cut back on certain things and if they want to have financial freedom or make more money, right?
Yep.
And then a lot of times people might say, oh, well, God is speaking to me and I hear something. I know I need to do something next, right?
Mhm.
But how do you make the shift between doing what you know you need to do and really getting comfortable in the living that you're used to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will tell you, I have found, I think it's two things. I think it's one, you finally get sick and tired of being sick and tired. For some people, it takes a little longer than others. I think that's the first thing, because you know you can try to stay in your comfort zone, but sooner or later you realize that that comfort zone is really not that comfortable,
Hmm.
because you realize you're missing out on things, on other things, and you have to decide. You know, is it more important to stay comfortable, or is it more important to fulfill this burning desire inside of you to, you know, for your life to have meaning in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's one, you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. You get tired of being in that quote unquote comfort zone, and then two, you are consumed with this vision that God has given you, and you cannot sleep until you have fulfilled the vision. And both of those things happened for me in that order. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I finally was open to hear what God had been trying to tell me. And then I was one. And then once he told me what it was that I had to do, and it was actually a vision from, you know, years ago that I had and I had actually written down, but I had never really fulfilled that part of, what he wanted me to do, that part of my purpose. And then once I understood what it was and I understood the impact it was going to have, I couldn't sleep. I can't sleep. Like, that's all I think about. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get this done. There's people who need to hear this, people who need to read this. So I really think the former has to happen, and then the latter is what is going to keep you going, even when things seem to be not moving as fast, and you're like, wait, God, I mean, you start questioning, did he really tell me this? I mean, did he really tell me that this is not for me to do? Wait a minute. No, I don't know about this, But he has ways of confirming it, through people, situations, circumstances, and again, through prayer. He has ways of still busting you upside your head when he thinks that you're not paying attention the way you should be, and I've had a couple of those too. And it's a faith walk. It's a faith walk all the way.
It's funny how you say that burning desire.
Yes.
Because for me, writing a book, I did not want to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
I had zero desire to do it. I'm like, I'm cool with my weekly blog post or whatever. And just stand behind the screen and just advising people from afar. Like, I didn't want to be in front of the camera at all. I had no desire to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, in terms of the book, I had this burning desire where I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I resisted. I'm like, I'm not writing this book. But I couldn't function literally until it was done. And then once I got it out, once it was written, I'm like, wait, I can go back. And even when I was just making the notes, I had this little notebook where I wrote the notes down for the book, just handwritten in pencil, right? It was like, that man from I forget the character's name, from The Beautiful Mind.
Oh, I don't even know.
He just like write all this stuff on the chalkboard.
Oh, yeah. It just starts to flow. It just starts to flow.
It flows. It flows. So was that did you experience the same thing when you were writing your book?
Yeah, I really did. And and I don't know if you want to go ahead and segue into that part now, or you want to talk about it a little later. But in terms of writing this book, it actually. It's actually a book written by myself and my sister, Christine St. Ville from Moms in Charge. Hopefully she's online as well and can pop in during our hangout. But we wrote the book in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And it was like I started writing, and before I knew it, my chapters were done. I mean, it was one of those things. And a lot of it too, like when I work on something like that, I think the one thing I have learned, and this is kind of what helps it to flow for me, and maybe for you too, what helps it to flow is a couple of things. One, I recognize that I'm just a vessel. The gifts, the skills, the talents, the experiences that I have, and especially the gifts that I have, I recognize, and I learned some time ago that they're not to, edify me. They're really to glorify God, and they're to serve others. And so when I recognized that, I understood that if God has given it to you and he has put it in front of you, he has programmed it. I like to say he's programmed it into your DNA. Like, it is there. That's why you can't sleep until you do it. If he's done all that, it means that he's already put in place the infrastructure, the people, the resources, the circumstances to make it come to pass. It's really up to us to have that faith and to walk right into it. And he has never failed me. When I look back, when I look at all the times I was like, okay, God, I know this isn't about me. It's about you. Show me how it's going to work. He has never, ever failed. The only times where I have faltered is when either I started doubting or I started trying to take things into my own power and doing things into my own hands and doing things in my own power. But, once you really understand that you're a vessel and that what you're doing, if you do it right, it's going to live beyond you, and you have that responsibility. So for me, as I was writing the book, writing my chapters, I understood that, oh my gosh, like, this is not about me. And I felt like it was really God speaking through me. I really believe that's what it was, because some of the things I wrote, look, I was going back and reading with my sister, we're going back and reviewing the book, and I was like, yo, Chrissy, this book is bad, you know. So, but you know, I don't take any credit for what has come out. I take credit for walking in my purpose and obeying the call. I mean, that's really what I take credit for, because all of us have a choice, right? You know, we can either understand that there's something God is telling us to do and we ignore that voice. I call that the still small voice.
Hmm.
Um, or we can say, you know what, God, I trust you. I can't sleep anyway till this is done. You're not letting me sleep. So let me just do it and do it to the best of my ability. And hey, you know, if I'm wrong, at the very least, I will have learned something, you know. But if it's something that's ingrained in your spirit, then usually, I mean, that can't be wrong. It may take a little while longer for it to actually come to pass the way that you think. And that's the other thing, you know, we have this vision of how things are going to play out. Now, the vision usually doesn't change, but what can change is how God fulfills that vision in your life. And that's the part that we have to get comfortable with, is it may not happen the way that you think is going to happen, but it's going to happen. You know, it's up to you to be obedient.
So I want to transition into the book in a second, but I just thought about this question, and
Yeah,
honestly, I just want to know. So, because you walk by faith too, right? So,
absolutely.
what happens when you awake out of your sleep with a vision and it makes zero sense, right? You write it down, and you're like, I don't understand this. And you look at everything that you do right now, and I'm like, I don't see where this fits. I don't understand it. I'm confused, frankly.
Yeah,
It's just, it's like almost seems like really out there. Like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
confused. Like,
yeah, yeah.
what do you do when that happens? Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, in I think 2006. You know, I mentioned that there are all these visions that came to me that God was like, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. This is 8 years ago. And what I did was, and most of the times those things come to me when I'm praying. So what I did was I wrote everything down, and I said, you know what? I'm not even going to try to figure it out right now. I'm just going to write it down, and I know at the appointed time, it's going to make sense. And I think we have to understand, when you're walking by faith, you know, if you look at so many of these stories in the Bible, you know, I mean, look at Noah. Who in the world would be like, okay, God told me to take two of every animal, my family, and build this big old ark? Like, that makes absolutely no sense, right?
Right.
You know, but he was obedient. And then once he was obedient, he understood, after everything went down, oh, it's a good thing I listened, even though it sounded ridiculous, right?
Right.
So for me, you know, a lot of the things that I now see coming to pass, like I really think that, you know, God will have you, you know, see something, because, you know, the Bible says, write the vision and make it plain. And that's another reason why I really believe in writing, because almost every single thing I've ever written down has come to pass. And a lot of it just has to do with your subconscious mind, you know, having you walk in that direction. But more than anything, is just it's supposed to happen, because that's what God has ordained for you. But you know, like for instance, this book, writing this book now, and it's the first of several books I know I'll be writing. But writing this book came to me in 2005. And at the time, I was like, God, you know, I was going through my divorce. I didn't want to even hear about it. I just said, okay, I'm going to write it down, and it'll make sense later. I'm not even going to try to figure it out, because I understood that it wasn't meant to happen right then and there, but that, you know, because of the way things had happened in my life, it was going to happen regardless of, you know, what I did or didn't do. So there's many, many times where God has told me, look, this is what you're going to do. I've had, oh my gosh, so many of those experiences. But the thing is, I have learned, and this is why prayer and writing are so important, you know, meditation, because the more you're in tune with your spirit, the more you start understanding when it's your own crazy thoughts and you just acting crazy, And it's really God speaking to you, and that this is something that you need to do. And I think when you're walking by faith, there's some things that are just not going to make sense, and you have to accept that. Your job is to not have to worry about whether or not it makes sense. Your job is to just follow God's lead and walk in it. And he never fails. Even when you sidetrack and go off all over the place, if it's meant for you, he will bring you right back like a compass, bring you right back to where you're supposed to be. Even though you take a couple detours, something that could have taken you a few months takes you 5, 10 years, but in that time, and I call that I was talking to a friend of mine today, actually, because he was sharing with me some challenges he's having. And I said, where you are right now is what I call the space in between blessings. So, you have these points in your life where things are going really well. And, you're like, wow, this is amazing. God, thank you. And then next thing you know, everything's just Murphy's Law happens in your life, right? Everything that can go wrong does. But then you're like, wait a minute, God, I know this is not where I'm supposed to be. Because you see the vision in your mind's eye. You're like, no, I know you showed me this, And the challenge is keeping your faith even in that space in between blessings. But if you are a person of faith, then, eventually you understand that things are going to course correct. And as long as you stay with your mind on the good things and on God, and understand that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, for me, that's helped me a lot. Understanding that everything that goes on around me, that doesn't define who I am. Kind of like what you say, that your finances don't define who you are. How much money you have doesn't define who you are. And really, it's in those dark moments, those tough times, is when you really start understanding what you're made of. And the fact that, what, I'm bigger than this. I'm more than, what I consider my failures, or, my financial challenges, or my broken relationships. Once you understand that, it just makes it a lot easier to say, what, God, I'm going to hang with you, because the alternative just ain't all that great.
Exactly. So I think that is an excellent segue into your book. Like, I cannot wait to read it. So I love the shoe analogy. So can you tell us about your book, and like, what was the inspiration behind it, and some of the events that you have coming up for it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so excited about this book that I've written with my sister, and here's the cover.
Yay! I love
the shoes. It's called Whose Shoes Are You Wearing? 12 Steps to Uncovering the Woman That You Really Want to Be. And, it's an interesting story how this came about. Probably not necessarily the typical way that people decide to write books. So, beginning of 2013 is when I really made up my mind to figure out what my next chapter was going to be. And that was a year I started really writing stuff down, brainstorming, and getting clear about what I'm doing now. And, when you're in that space of real clarity, that's when things really do start flowing. You get rid of all the stuff that's clogging up your spiritual pipeline, right? I like to say that when you use Drano to clear up your clogs, like in your house, I say prayer is the Drano for your pipeline to God.
Right.
So as long as you keep it clear, you're gonna be all right. You're gonna stay on the right course. So you got to remember to get all that gunk out every now and then. And so I think by getting all that gunk out and going through my own transformation last year, I was able to become really clear about what I'm supposed to be doing. And a lot of that has to do with inspiring other women who go through challenges, who don't know where to turn, don't recognize their own worth, and especially women from multicultural backgrounds. Because I think there are a lot of self-help books out there. I mean, I have some favorites: Lisa Nichols, T.D. Jakes, Wayne Dyer. So many of those books out there. But what I recognize, and I've read, many of their books, but I recognize that, especially for someone like me, who has grown up in a African household, but here in the United States, there are different challenges sometimes that you have to deal with when culture plays a factor in how you see yourself and in your own self-esteem and your self-worth and your self-image. So, my sister and I were having a conversation last November, and I watched her. This is my little sister, my younger sister. I'm not going to call her little because she's like 5 inches taller than me. But my younger sister, she's gone through her own incredible transformation over the past 3 years. And so, watching her go through that transformation and, the confidence and the self-esteem that she's built up, starting her company, Moms in Charge, showing other moms how to just, look good and feel great without feeling guilty, and just seeing her transformation. I was like, wow, I was just so proud of her. So we were having a conversation one day, and she was like, Julian, I've been doing coaching and consulting with other moms and doing workshops, teaching moms how to feel good without feeling guilty. And I really am trying to find, what helped me brainstorm about a product that I can develop that I can just sell, And I said, well, Chrissy, how about we write a book? You talk about transformation, I talk about transformation, that's what we preach. And so why don't we write a book on transformation? And so, so funny because she thought I meant, an ebook, like a 10, 20-page ebook. Let's write an ebook, And next thing you know, we have a 144-page book.
Oh, wow.
With 12 incredible chapters. And actually, let me read you some of these chapter titles so you all understand that you need to get this book. So the first chapter is called Keeping It Real, Removing the Weave, the Lashes, and the Heels. Yes, we did, ladies. Yes, we did. And that I'm speaking to everybody. So that's one of the chapters. Another chapter is the definition of insanity. And, we've talked about that whole comfort zone thing where it stops being really so comfortable. And I think one of my favorite chapters is called Who Told You You Were Jerry Maguire? You don't need anyone to complete you. So, we go through so many different topics in this book, but what we do is we make sure that people can relate to them, because for every chapter that we write, we talk about our own personal experiences and how we got through certain things and how we found our purpose, how we got to where we need to be. Because, I think one of the most difficult and I think the most frustrating places to be, and I'm sure you can relate, Aisha, is when you know that you have something in you and you want to make a difference and you want to make an impact and affect people, but it's like you're almost like you're being held by chains, like you don't know how in the world to get from where you are to where you're supposed to be. And, I was there. I was like, okay, God, I know you didn't give me this for nothing. I started doubting my own gifts. I started thinking, God, maybe I imagined all those things that you told me. I imagined the vision you gave me. I imagined, that I was as talented as you said I was. And that's never the case. I think the enemy uses those doubts to keep us from really discovering our purpose. And so we wrote this book to help other women who are stuck trying to figure out, okay, I know I have this inside of me, but how do I get to there from where I am? A lot of times it feels impossible. And I think sometimes it seems impossible because we're trying to eat this whole elephant at one time, instead of saying, you know what, let me take it one day, one lesson at a time, and eventually I'm going to get there. So this book, Whose Shoes Are You Wearing, is really, one of the reasons we use that shoe analogy. It's twofold, right? So, people are always saying, well, you need to walk in my shoes so you can understand what I've been through. In this instance, it was really about, many of us are wearing somebody else's shoes. We're wearing shoes that don't fit us, that are too big, that are too tight, that are not our style, that are too, we may want high heels and we're wearing these, sneakers or flats or whatever, or vice versa. And we're not walking in our own shoes. We're not walking our own path. We're living somebody else's dream, whether it's our parents, whether it's our spouse, whether it's our siblings. And we're doing that because we haven't taken the time to discover what it is that we really want and really digging through whatever challenges that have held us back from our past. And you really cannot discover your purpose and live it until you have dealt with whatever stuff, whatever baggage. And in fact, we have a chapter in here about baggage and getting rid of excess baggage. We say that's like the ultimate weight loss solution. You know, it's getting rid of that baggage, whether it's people, whether it's relationships, whether it's, you know, traumatic experiences from your past. You really can't figure out, discover, walk in your purpose until you deal with some of that stuff. And so, I mean, we're so excited. I mean, we even gave the preview, the first couple of chapters to a couple people just to get a sense of if you know, other people would find this as appealing as we thought it was. And we actually had 3 men. You know, one was my nephew, and then a couple of good friends of ours who read the previews, and they were like, you know, I know you wrote this book for women, but men need this too. So for me, that was such a testimonial that, you know, this is definitely a message that needs to be heard, and we're just really excited to share it with everybody. And so let me just give a few more details about the book. So you can go to www.whoseshoesbook, WHOSE shoes and then book.com. Make sure to
How to
sign up.
work the little part where you put the tagline at the
Oh
bottom.
yes,
I
let
will put
me
it up, but I'm scared I'm gonna break the video.
yeah, let me see if I can type that in. I forgot about that. You know, this whole technology thing is new to me. Hopefully everybody can see that note there. But you go to whoseshoesbook.com, sign up to receive our email. We'll be giving you some exciting updates as we go. And then we have our official book launch on May 13th, which is a little less than a month away. And it's going to be in Washington, D.C. We're still working out the details, and that's why you got to sign up to our mailing list to know where and when it's going to be. We will be doing a book tour around the country. But I mean, we're so excited. I mean, we feel blessed already because we know, you know, sometimes you work on something and you just know that it's going to bless people. And we know this is one of those projects.
No, I am so excited. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I honestly like wish I had that when I was younger because
Yeah.
you know you live your life trying to fulfill your parents' dreams,
Yep.
society's dreams. People tell you, well, you got to go to school, which you have to. Don't get me wrong,
Yep.
but it's always like so you can go get a good job.
Yep.
And that job was always predefined for you. You would take these
Exactly.
surveys and it'd be like, okay, out of all the jobs that we can think of right now, you best fit this, right? And they don't really push you to really explore what
Yeah.
works for you or encourage you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find
Most of
your
our,
own
yeah, and
path.
that's true. You know, a lot of our parents, I think, and I can definitely speak from an African perspective because just about every friend I know has had the same experience. You know, they want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, you know, accountant, the kind of jobs that they think bring in a lot of money. But I think we've seen these past few years at the speed at which business has changed, there's no such thing as, you know, a good job, so to think, or secure job security. You know, I think we're learning that we have to create our own job security. And so I think with our parents, you know, they were looking for that idea of security. But technology has changed so fast and globalization has changed how we do business that now you have to really, even if you're working at what you think is a secure job, most people now have a side hustle or two because they recognize that you have to create your own security. But I think parents always want the best for you, and that's something that we keep in mind. But at the same time, I mean, there's what 70% of people who are not working in jobs that they like. I mean, they did a survey last year, I think it was, and 70% of the U.S. public hates their job.
Yeah.
So that tells you there's a lot of people wearing the wrong shoes. And that's why y'all need to buy the book, buy the book.
Look.
May 13th, and we will be doing pre-sales starting later this month. Before the end of April, we'll be sending out a notice letting you all know you can pre-order your book. And we're going to have a lot of great surprises coming up, giveaways and contests and all kinds of stuff. So make sure you sign up at whoseshoesbook.com. Follow us on Twitter at Whose Shoes Book. Facebook is also Whose Shoes Book. And, you know, we definitely look forward to sharing more with you as great things start to happen.
Yay! I am so excited. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to read the book. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. This was great.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. We have to do it again. Oh my God! Like
now that we know how to do it, right?
now we know how to do it, and now I know like there's a weird glitch with the back of
So see, it wasn't us. It wasn't us.
It wasn't us. Yeah. But you know what? Like you said before, the devil was trying his work, but we needed to get this message out. Like it was, again, it's just about being obedient, because when I connected with you, I'm like, look, like it's just so natural. I just wanted to create something where we can just create something so people can go back and listen to it over and over and over again, because I just knew from our initial conversation, if we both didn't have to go, you had to go because I was driving.
Yeah. Yes.
I have about 30 more minutes left on my drive, but like I just knew that we just had to just do it again. So
yeah, no, it's great to be here. Now, was there any Q&A? I didn't know if
Oh, good point.
Q&A from folks. I'm still learning how to even work that. So I don't even
Oh, yeah, somebody said you guys on.
Eleanor's on. Yeah, Ellie.
Yay!
Great.
I love it. So yeah, I got some compliments. This is awesome.
Yeah.
If anyone has a question, please submit it in the Q&A box and we will answer it. Oh, thank you, Cara. Thank you. She said it was a great session.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Cara.
So awesome. So thank you so much for joining. And for you guys, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter at FNPhenomenal, just like it sounds. Here's the book right here. So, yes, so
buy the book.
Buy the book. This book is the #1 Amazon bestseller.
Yes.
What I do is I make personal finance fun and approachable.
I love it.
That way you can learn the lessons and just integrate it immediately. And some of the feedback that I've received, and it's funny how you mentioned feedback from men, because there's a woman on the cover, right?
Yes.
I've had messages from men saying that the tips that I provide in the book are applicable to men as well. It's funny, in the testimonial, the guy said, I am not a woman.
Isn't that funny, though? But you know what I realize about that? I think the thing that demonstrated to me the most is that, you know, and it's this great quote that Oprah said at an event a couple of weeks ago that she said, you know, everybody wants 3 things. Every single person, this is universal, doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter what language you speak, doesn't matter if you're male or female, everybody wants 3 things. You want to be heard, you want to be seen, and you want to know that you matter. And so when you start understanding that everybody wants those 3 things and that a lot of our challenges are universal, you realize that, you know what, almost every single thing that you talk about when it comes to personal growth, development, it's applicable to you whether you're male or female. So, you know, it was very eye-opening for me, I think, just like you, getting that feedback from men saying, you know, wow. Because I think part of it is that we don't think that men go through the things that we go through as women, which is totally false. They actually have a harder time because society tells them they're not supposed to show their weaknesses. So it's great when they come out and say, you know, I know you wrote it for women, but that actually applies to me too. Thank you. So I totally understand.
I love it. And so just to wrap up, so you can follow me, like I said, Facebook and Twitter, FNPhenomenal, FNPhenomenal.com, and then the book, because I forgot to say the name because I got so excited talking about it. So 5+5 FNPhenomenal ways to save $100 this week without killing your lifestyle.
We could all use that extra 100.
We can all use that extra 100 and multiply that by 12. Yes. We can really use that, right?
Yes.
It's a great book, so I would encourage you to go to the www.fnphenomenal.com site and click on Access the Book, and you can learn a lot more about the book. Be sure to register for the mailing list, because what I do is when you subscribe, you get a freebie. And what I do is I give you a 5-day audio series to tell you how to save money, get phenomenal, and incorporate reflection in that process. And then also, you'll receive a weekly newsletter from me with different tips on how to be everyday phenomenal, along with the feature blog article of the week. So I definitely encourage
Love it.
you to
Yes,
check
and
that out.
I will testify. I got the last one. I think you sent it today. Great e-news, so definitely subscribe.
And thank you, thank you. And for those of you who are Scandal fans, I know we're a little after 10, but
Yes.
please join me on my Scandal Twitter chat. It's a
And
lot
if
of
you don't
fun.
mind, I just wanted to throw out my website as well and my Twitter. So if you want to follow me, Julian Kiganda, you can follow me at Twitter. So I am at Bold Fearless and the number 1 on Twitter. On Facebook, it's Bold and Fearless and the number 1. And then my blog is www.boldandfearless.me. And
I
I
love
use me because when you say I'm bold and fearless, that applies to everybody. So hope to see you all there.
And I love your blog. So everybody, please check out her blog. It's awesome. Oh, it's
Thank
phenomenal. Sorry,
you.
my word. So thank you. So Julian, I just want to ask you, is there anything else that you want to just leave with the listeners and the viewers right now? The floor is yours.
You know, I would say, because this is what I'm so passionate about, I would say every single person has a responsibility to figure out what their purpose is and how they are to fulfill it. And the thing is, you don't have to do it by yourself. You have to, I think very often we tend to try to put ourselves, isolate ourselves and not really look at the fact that we have so many people out there who are willing to be a listening ear, to help, to point you in the right direction. So, lean on your community of support. But really, I've learned and I've discovered that I want to die when I'm all used up. I say, I fear more dying without ever having used my gifts than
Mm.
I do, just figuring out what they are and going for it. So I would just encourage every single person out there, whatever it is, if it's in your spirit, if it's in your mind, if it's in your heart, it's part of your DNA. And so God has already put that infrastructure in place for you to fulfill whatever that vision is He's given you. And God bless everybody.
God bless. Thank you,
Thank
Julian.
you, Aisha. This was
This has been
great.
amazing.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.
Cool. And Julian, you stay on, so I'm gonna stop it.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.